Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of Extra Time with me, Baker Lilovic for In Scout Network today. And today we've got Matt Smith joining us on the podcast. Matt, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to this.
Really looking forward to chatting with you all about your journey because it's it's one that's taken a lot of different turns really. So we'll come to that soon. But if we kind of start by going back to the start like we do with every guest, what was life like growing up for you, Matt, and where did your interest kind of lie?
Yeah, it was an interesting start. My parents met in the army, so one Scouser, one Southerner. They met, and being in the army, we had to move multiple times. I think I started down south and then ended up in Newcastle and was kind of brought up there for probably the first sort of between maybe the ages of 3 and 10, playing football just all the time. I remember joining my first team at under 6 level, playing all the way through to sort of under 9s, under 10s before I moved down south again, and yeah, just drilled into me from a young age to love football. It's something my dad loved, and he played in the army and outside of work as well. And yeah, my mum is a reasonable football fan, but it was my dad that really got me into it and got me into supporting Everton as well. And yeah, it's just been an obsession from very young, and I continued playing when I came down south as well through sort of all youth level. Took it, reasonably serious. Always wanted to become a professional, but never quite got there. Did okay in terms of playing a little bit in non-league, but yeah, it was a good upbringing, and yeah, moved down south, and yeah, it's been good, and it's led me to where I am today. That obsession with football and things like that.
So it was kind of always there from a young age then, that love for football.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I went to my first game at, I think it was 2003, so I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I don't have too many memories as a youngster. I have about just a small selection, and walking out at Goodison Park for the first time was one of them. And I think I see it when I go to games now, and I've seen it with my little brothers. When you walk out onto the through the turnstiles and onto the terraces, it's a special feeling, and you see so many people at games now that just instantly fall in love with it. So many kids, the faces on them, and I can only imagine that was me. But yeah, it's one of the distinct memories I have of my early years and growing up loving football is getting out and getting to my very first game. And yeah, it's just been an obsession ever since, and unfortunately been obsessed with Everton as well.
I was going to ask actually, is that a Leighton Baines shirt that I can see?
That is, yeah, that is
Yeah, I could
special number, that one.
I could guess by the last two letters in that little picture down there. So, big Everton fan then. So, t tell me a little bit about how it kind of transpired for you then. You know, lo loving football. You said you always wanted to make it a professional, but didn't quite make it. So, how did your journey within the game kind of transpire after that? Did you get involved with Sunday League, non-league football after you realised you probably weren't going to have a career as a professional?
Yeah, it was a weird one actually. I only found this out a few years ago, but on my last ever game when playing in Newcastle, I got scouted to go on trial with Newcastle. But my mum didn't tell me for, must have been what, 12, 13 years, didn't tell me that I got asked to go on trial because she knew I'd want to go, and we had to move down south. So it
Really?
was, yeah, an interesting one. And it's one of them where you look back and think, oh, could that have worked out? But, the number of players that get scouted at that age and don't make it, I you know, don't hold it against my mum for not telling me. But yeah, after that, moved down south and didn't, it was hard because, you're a young lad moving schools and you've got to try and make friends. And the first friend I made at school, I instantly was like, "Do you play football?" and joined their team by the weekend. So just continued playing at youth level on Sundays, and I kind of just progressed. I played for the same team all throughout youth level, and then went on to play for their reserve team at senior level, then the first team, then coached them, then managed the under 21 team. So I stayed pretty loyal to that team. And yeah, I was there for quite a few years, from all the way from youth level, and yeah, just absolutely loved it, and yeah, progressed all the way to the first team, and like I said, ended up coaching and managing as well. So yeah, it was an interesting sort of journey through that, and at the time I couldn't imagine anything anything else. Just it was the love for football. I just wanted to play it all the time, whether that was five-a-side, kick about with friends, matches, training. When I got to about 24, 25, training was the last thing I wanted to do sometimes. But as a kid, it was amazing just being able to go and have a kick around with your friends. So yeah, just sort of progressed all the way through and yeah, absolutely loved it.
And so you still had such a buzz as well, playing at a lower level.
Yeah, I just loved that, especially when you get older, the sort of changing room camaraderie and things like that. But through the youth level, it was just a great way to go out with your friends and play football and just enjoy yourself. I didn't really enjoy school too much. I wasn't overly academic, and the only reason I liked going to school was to socialize with friends, and then football was the enjoyment in my life. I didn't have really any other hobbies, which some people might find a bit strange, but I think when you're so obsessed with one thing, I don't think it's too much of an issue. And I loved it so much that it didn't bother me that I wasn't enjoying, other sports or other activities. It was the obsession that I think has led me sort of to where I am today because there was no other real distractions or no other activities or sports that were grabbing my interest and I could put all my focus into football and yeah, not enough to make it professional, but it's one of them things I don't look back with any sort of regrets because the life I've got now is great and I'm more than happy with how my sort of love for football has developed into being able to work and talk about football for a living. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything.
I mentioned that, like you say there, your journey, your particular journey has taken quite a lot of different routes, given that you were playing football and had a bad ACL injury. So can you tell me a little bit about that and how that kind of panned out when you got this injury and how it kind of came about?
Yeah, I remember it. It's like I said, I don't remember too many memories from football games too much because obviously I've just played hundreds of games in my sort of career, if you like. But the moment I did my knee it's so vivid in my memory, and it was just a pre-season game on a bit of a hard, dodgy pitch, and it's just one of them things where no one around just took a touch with my chest, and all of a sudden my knees twisted it in the ground. My foot stayed on the ground, and my knees gone the other way, and I've never had any kind of injury which I'd consider serious. I think the worst one before that was breaking my hand, where it doesn't really debilitate you like a knee injury does, but this was yeah instantly kind of knew something's up, and just remember going to the hospital that night, passing out in A&E because of the medicine they gave me, which sent me a bit loopy, but yeah, initially they didn't want to even give me an MRI. They X-rayed it, said nothing's wrong. Didn't want to give me an MRI, but yeah, we're going to send me home. And me knowing my body and knowing having a few niggly injuries before, I was like, no, I know this is serious. Like I've had little injuries before. I know this isn't one of them. So I basically begged them to give me an MRI, and they were like, okay, we'll book you in for an MRI in a few weeks. And it was a couple of weeks later, I went for the MRI. Again, worst experience of my life. Having to hold your knee in a straight position when it's still in absolute agony was not ideal. But yeah, then got the results, and it was an ACL tear and also an MCL tear as well. So it was a pretty bad one, and yeah, didn't get surgery. So spent a couple of years recovering, and then I got back playing, and then did it again. So it was
Happened
really
twice.
yeah. So there's sort of I don't know how much you know about sort of ACL injuries, but they were telling me that you don't have to have surgery. If you don't have surgery, there's a 50-50 chance that you'll be able to play again, no problems. Do the rehab, strengthen it, you'll be fine. And then it was the first game of the season. I remember I walked out as captain, 20 minutes in, done it again. So back to square one. But yeah, rewinding back a bit, it was yeah, getting that injury was one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through. And like I mentioned earlier, it makes him a bit weird and a bit strange to some people that a football injury can impact you, but it was single-handedly one of the worst things that's ever happened to me simply because I was playing football 5 times a week. I'd do training on a Tuesday, Thursday, game on a Saturday, sometimes game Sundays, sometimes a five-a-side thrown in there, sometimes a kick out with my friends thrown in there. So it's almost every single day of my life that instantly gets taken away from you in a heartbeat. And as dramatic as it sounds, it did sort of crush me because I didn't really realize how much I loved football at that age. I knew I loved it as a kid. I knew I loved it growing up. But at the time, I didn't realize how much of an escape it was for me and how much of a distraction it was for me. I was going through not difficult times, but tricky times in terms of I wasn't happy in my job, didn't like where my life was really going. And then the injury comes alongside that, can't work, can't earn money. And it just all sort of went down the pan. And yeah, it was a very, very difficult time for me. And I found I don't like to say mental health problems too much, but I do think I suffered in a way where it was kind of like a situational thing where this injury and removal of football and even removal of being able to walk and it's little things like walking upstairs and sometimes a few months later, even when it was starting to settle down, I'd step down a curb and it would, give way. And little things like that you just take for granted. But yeah, it went down a pretty bad path and then luckily I managed to sort of recover it myself by finding my love for football again, just in a non-playing sense, basically.
I bet it affected you a lot. Like, it just goes back to what you were saying. Football was your life, really, and it was the only thing you really loved. So I bet that was really hard. And would you say the second time was harder than the first time?
Um, it's a good question. I'd say the first time I think was the hardest simply because it was before I'd got into this new career that I'm now on. It was before I was really happy with my life in terms of work and career. So the first time was really difficult because of that. It came at a bad time for me mentally, and I just wasn't happy with life regardless. And what the silver lining was that it did push me to change my life, and I remember I was in bed with my knee up, and I decided that I was going to change my career because I had nothing really to lose. I could still do it alongside work when I was back at work. So the first time was really difficult, but at the same time, it did push me to really change my life. The second time it was it wasn't nice, obviously, because of the not being able to play football again. But I think when I'd gone through it already, I knew what was to come. There was nothing really unexpected,
Yeah.
and there wasn't that surprise or the shock that was coming. So it was a little bit easier for me to deal with. Plus, I'd just been in my new career for sort of a couple of years now, or maybe a year at that point. So I was kind of a bit happier. My life was going in a better direction, and it was a lot easier to deal with that time.
Tell me a little bit about this kind of new direction that football took for you then after you had this ACL injury and you moved more into like the analytics side of it and analysing the game because it's led to you appearing on Sky Sports, which is incredible. But t tell me a little bit about the journey leading up to this, Matt.
Yeah, as I mentioned then, it was literally laid in bed with my knee up with after having the injury, and I was off work at the time and not enjoying work anyway. And I just decided to. It's the three words I always give as advice to people that ask me. I get a lot of people asking me, and I always say just do it. And at that time, I just did it. I didn't quit my job. I didn't drop everything to do this, but I thought right, I need to still be involved in football.
Yeah.
I can't be as a player right now. I may never play again. I don't know. So I was like, I'm gonna have to do this, and I went on to Twitter, made an account, and was just thinking of names. And I thought, I want to talk about tactics. I support Everton. Call it Tactically Everton. I was anonymous. I just created an account with a random picture, and just thought it was just after we played Southampton about 4 years ago now, and I just analysed the game with a few pictures, a few things like that. Didn't really know what I was doing. but I had a bit of an eye. I felt I had a bit of an eye for analysing football, and I just did it. Then all of a sudden, it starts picking up a bit of traction, and the follower count goes up, and I think it was a thousand within 3 or 4 days, and 3,000 within a month. And at the time, I was absolutely blown away. I was right at the moment. Followers don't mean too much to me, but back then it was kind of like a validation thing. I was like, wow, I'm actually what I'm doing, people are enjoying, and I got a real
Mm.
satisfaction from people enjoying that. And I think the moment I created the account, it was I'm going to make this my job because whatever that may be, whether that be through writing about football or talking about football, I just knew that if I wanted to be happy, I just wanted to be involved in the game somehow. So I just kept analysing, and within 3 weeks, I got a job at Royal Blue Mersey, and I think they deserve a massive shout out. I always speak to them every now and again now because they were the first ones to give me that just a little part-time role. It wasn't a lot of money. It was just a couple of articles a week, and that just gave me the bit of a portfolio to start with, and I'm very grateful for them for taking me on at that point, and yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there. Really, I worked with them for quite a few months before. I think it was 9 months after I created the Twitter account, I got an offer to write full time, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do in terms of analysing football. It was kind of reporting and transfers and things like that. But I was talking about football. I couldn't
Yeah.
complain. It was a really interesting one because at the time I'd got back to work and I got this offer, and it was a huge, huge, huge pay cut. But it was such an easy decision at the same time because I just knew that I hated what I was doing, regardless of the money. And I knew that this would bring me that satisfaction and build up my mental health again because I was still in a pretty bad place, even though the Twitter account was doing well, but I didn't really mean much in terms of helping out my mental health and my well-being because it's just a few followers on the screen. So it 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 wasn't a hard decision, and luckily I had the support of my girlfriend because we were living together at the time. So me taking a pay cut impacted her too, but she
Yeah.
was like, "Go for it." So I did, and yeah, since then it's just been building up and building up to different full-time roles and different freelance work, and yeah, it's been a pretty crazy few years since that point. But yeah, I've worked. I feel like I've worked hard for it. Sometimes I think I'm lucky, but sometimes you build your own luck, and it's single-handedly the best thing I ever done was just log on to Twitter that day and create that Twitter account because I get a lot of comments sometimes, with people thinking that when I talk about the Twitter account, thinking that, oh, it's just a Twitter account. Well, to me, it wasn't. You know, creating that Twitter account was the biggest thing to ever happen to me because
Yeah.
I dread to think where I would be if I didn't do that. And yeah, like I said, it's really snowballed from there, and easily the best thing I've ever done.
So the saying goes, like being in the right place at the right time. You were
Mm,
just setting that Twitter account up and it leading to be such a big thing for you, really.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what sort of came over me at the time to make it. I just distinctly remember just laying there and just doing it, and didn't even tell my girlfriend who I was living with because I was not embarrassed, but I was kind of like, what are people going to think about this? Because that's why basically I was anonymous at the time until I got the full time role. I changed from anonymous and sort of came out as who I was and
Yeah.
revealed it to my friends because I felt like I had the validation then because I'd been given a job from it. Whereas, my advice to other people would be that, don't be scared of things like that. I shouldn't have been because it was a passion of mine and I should be able to show that off to people. But yeah, I didn't even show my girlfriend until a few months or a few weeks later when the follower count was growing. I was like, I've got to tell someone else. So I just couldn't hold it in any longer. But yeah, she was very supportive, and yeah, I thank her a lot for that. And yeah, definitely right place, right time.
So tell me a little bit about how it was getting on Sky Sports then, and how did that come around? Because like you say, you're building up and building up. But when you get a gig on Sky Sports, it's possibly the biggest organization you can work for in football. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah, definitely. And throughout my sort of 3 or 4 years doing this, there's been little moments of sort of validation or moments where I look back and go like, give yourself a pat on the back there. Because I don't do it too often. I don't talk about my story too much, which is why I was really looking forward to coming on here and giving my sort of story to people. And there are a few moments where I look back and I do actually feel proud of myself, and that's definitely one of them. It's one of them things. It was one of the scariest moments of my life, and in the moment it was terrible because of the pressure and the nerves. But you look back and it was like, wow, that was amazing. It was an unbelievable moment, and it was just sort of all these years of hard work and putting in the graft to try and get to where I am today, and it kind of validated it all. And it's the type of thing where I do a lot of things and I work for a lot of companies, 6 or 7 at the moment, but I've been on multiple podcasts and YouTube channels. But my family don't have a clue about any of that. And then you tell them you're on Sky Sports, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
And it's kind of like it's weird because people in the industry will know the companies I'm working for, the work I'm doing. They're like, oh yeah, that's cool. But none of my family, although they support me massively, and my mum specifically is very interested in what I do. Most of the family is kind of like, yeah. But when it's Sky Sports, it's a real big thing, and it was a real nice moment for them to kind of to show their support to me, and yeah, it was a weird moment calling me up at 6 p.m. and on a Thursday, and then asking me to be on at 11 a.m. on Friday. It was panic stations from
big
Thursday.
turnaround.
Yeah, exactly. And I was, yeah, struggled to sleep that night. But yeah, it might not seem like a massive deal to a lot of people, but I think when you're in this industry and you're trying so hard and working so hard to develop yourself and really get to where you want to be, it was a real sort of special moment for me. And yeah, working for Fanalyst and a company backed by Sky and Gary, founded by Gary Neville and Michael McIntyre, and they've selected me to be involved with that. It was a real sort of special moment, and yeah, Sky Sports on top of that really sort of topped it off as well.
It's like one of them things, Sky Sports, I can imagine. I mean, like you say, there's so many different kind of organizations within the football industry and the media industry within football. But when you're talking Sky Sports, it must be pretty full circle, given if you're a football fan. That's the show you watch with your family when you're checking your team's score when you're a young kid or whatever. So I bet that does feel really a full circle when Sky Sports come calling.
Yeah, and it's weird you say full circle. I remember we spoke about sort of having very few young memories in football, and another one that I do remember is finding out Wayne Rooney was leaving Everton to join Manchester United, and I was in my grandparents' living room, and it came up on Sky Sports that he was leaving Everton, and I remember sitting there crying as a 6, 5, 6, 7 year old because
Yeah.
my favorite player was leaving, and yeah, you think about 20 years later, I'm then appearing on Sky Sports. Yeah, it's a real sort of full circle, and yeah, a real proud moment for me and my family as well.
It's it's incredible, it really is, and it's just great to hear the story that is kind of I'll start again. It's incredible, and it's just amazing to hear your story, really, given how you obviously had a bad injury and you thought that maybe could be the end of your time in football, but it's transpired into something amazing, and you continue to do the work now. So, what have you been up to lately, Matt? With the
Well,
new season kicking off recently as well.
say that again.
Especially with the new season kicking off recently as well.
Yeah, I've just been just trying to sort of work on my work and try and continue building my career. It's always a difficult period after the end of the previous season where work goes a bit quiet
Mm.
and all of a sudden they throw Sky Sports on you. So it was quite interesting. But yeah, it's been trying to get back into football. Unfortunately, it's not been easy for me the last few months. I think trying to put a lot more into work than I usually would. I've got a baby on the way in November, so
Congratulations on
yeah,
that.
thank you very much. So it's been a lot of, I've always worked hard and I've always focused on work, but it's now a real focus on trying to work and things like that due to obviously the expensive nature of having a child, which I've already had the experience of in terms of buying prams and cots and things like that. So yeah, I've been focusing really heavily and trying to build up and just continue basically because that, like I mentioned previously, obviously playing football was the biggest thing for me at the time, and over the years it's become less so, but that's purely because of what I've been able to do in terms of analyzing it and talking about it. It's kind of replaced that for me now. I do try and play. I've played this season, but it's just having to take a back foot at the moment. But yeah, luckily for me, I have been able to replace that with a different a different way of being involved in football, and I do miss it, miss playing. But yeah, when you get to sort of 29 years old and child on the way and buying a house and things like that, it's not a major priority. But yeah, it's been good, and yeah, I'm really happy that the football's back and the new season. So yeah, just continue trying to work and try and build up my work and yeah, and then try and welcome a new member of the family soon.
Well, sounds like it's shaping up to be an exciting few months for you in general, really, because you've got obviously the baby on the way, and Everton are doing quite well as well now. So
Yeah, exactly.
especially
So it's
with
looking
Jack
pretty
Grealish in the
perfect.
team.
Yeah, my hero.
So sounds like it's all going well for you in every kind of aspect. But no, just going on what you were saying there, I'm really glad you've come on, Matt, and explained your story and your journey, because one thing that we'd like to get across in this podcast is it's not just about, like, we've spoken with people from all different backgrounds in football, and it's to like kind of get the message out there and inspire people, ensure that having that you can have a successful career within the football industry without playing for Manchester United, for Arsenal, for Man City, for Everton. In your case, it's like it just goes to show that you can have such a successful career within the game without playing at a big level.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think playing football did help me in a way, but it's certainly not necessary.
Mm.
And I know a lot of people who I've worked with in terms of coaching and analyzing games and been on podcasts with. So many of them have never been able to play at a high level, have never coached at a high level. It's not a complete necessity at all, and all you have to do is be willing to work and be willing to put the effort in, and that's the same in any industry and in any walk of life. But yeah, I think it may often put off a lot of people trying to get into the football industry, thinking that you have to have all these qualifications or you have to have gone to university or you have to play at a certain level, which is simply not true. I'm rewinding a bit here, but I dropped out of university twice, 6 months in one university, 6 months in the other, no university qualifications, and still managed to work for some of the biggest football websites in the industry. And I it's what I say to a lot of people. I do think it helps with the qualifications. It can give you sort of a head start, but don't ever sort of think that you have to do it, or if you've failed uni, or if you've dropped out of college, that it's the end, or there's no way back, or you're not going to be able to make it in this industry or any industry. That it's simply not true, and it's not just my case example. There's plenty out there, and yeah, it's just important not to give up and yeah, like I mentioned at the start of the podcast, you've just got to do it. You've just got to give
Yeah.
it a go, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But there is no harm in trying, and yeah, you just can't be afraid to just give it a shot because you'll thank yourself in the long run if it does pay off.
Really wise words, and it's quite fitting you're saying that now, actually, because the way we always finish the podcast is by asking each guest if they could give a piece of advice to the younger self, the teenage self, knowing what they know now, what they didn't know back then, what would it be? And it kind of seems like you've got a lot of experience since then, Matt. So what would it be for you that you would go back and tell a teenage Matt Smith?
Yeah, I'd love to tell different ages of Matt Smith, so many different things, but I think just as a general teenager, it would just be to simply not to worry that your life isn't in order at that point in time or you
Yeah,
don't know what you want to do. Like I seemed so sure at the ages 14, 15, 16 that I wanted to go to university. I wanted to become a PE teacher. That was all I ever wanted. I had it mapped out. That's exactly what I was going to do. Partly due to pressures of teachers. Oh, you like sport? You like football? Oh, you could be a PE teacher. Okay, sounds good. And I just went with it. And that's all I ever wanted to do. And then when it came to 16, 17, 18, I sort of had a change of thought and didn't really want to do that. But then I was panicking, thinking, I don't know where to go from here now. And yeah, that would be my advice is to not worry in that moment. It's never too late. I changed my career completely at the age of sort of 25, completely different industries to what I'd worked before. So yeah, my advice to my younger self would be not to worry, not to panic, and not to be caught up in worried about how your career is at that time or how your life is shaping up because there's so much time to be able to change it around or head in a different direction.
I think that's a very important piece of advice, and it's one that a lot of people should take note of because, like you say, there's plenty of time, and even from my experiences too, I didn't really know what I wanted to do until quite late on. So I totally resonate with you on that, and I think it's a great piece of advice. So thank you for sharing that, Matt, and just a big thank you for joining us once again on the podcast and sharing your story.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks a lot for having me on. I've really enjoyed that conversation.